Welcome to Legacy and Leadership with David McKean. In my 20 plus years in the business world, I have noticed a common theme amongst all my clients. They're phenomenal leaders who are concerned about leaving a legacy in three main areas: community, family, and financial. So join me as we talk to proven leaders in their fields about their best practices regarding legacy and leadership. Pleased to introduce Dr. Mark Foley, who has been generous with his time to join us today. Dr. Mark Foley served as the third president of the University of Mobile from 1998 to 2016, long tenure there. Yeah. During his 18-year tenure, he led the move to intentionally integrate learning, faith, and leadership in all areas of the university life while raising academic standards, establishing outstanding programs such as the Center for Performing Arts, and leading the university to national rankings. Also during that period, the university invested almost $45 million in capital projects, including the Weaver Hall Enhancement Project that gave the university's first historic building its iconic look with the pitched roof, portico and cupola? Cupola. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Other additions include 3 resident halls, a professional recording studio, and Ram Hall Auditorium. So their singers are incredible. Previously, Dr. Foley served as Executive Vice President of New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. He holds a Bachelor of Business Administration from Hardin-Simmons University in Abilene, Texas, and a Master's of Divinity and a Doctor of Philosophy in Psychology and Counseling from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. He is also an ordained minister, a former business owner, and has practiced as a professional counselor. His wife, Marilyn, served at his side as First Lady for the University of Mobile. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Education from Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas, and is a former educator. So welcome, Dr. Foley. We're glad to have you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. I've known Dr. Foley for over 15 years in various Bible studies and organizations around Mobile, and I've heard him speak on multiple occasions. And one of the things that I noticed almost immediately about Dr. Foley is his leadership is very intentional. Dr. Foley, how have you developed that intentionality as a leader?
I appreciate the word intentional. That's, I think that's center to a lot of things, but it's a derivative of another word called purpose. I think if you're going to talk about intentionality, if you're talking about leadership, you've got to talk about purpose. You know, in business today, the word is mission, and I get that, but I think the word that precedes mission has to be purpose.
I love it.
There's a great quote, and I forget the source at the moment, but he who has a why can deal with any how. And as a business owner, you know both are important. The purpose answers the question why.
Yeah.
Mission answers the question what and how.
I love it.
And we've both seen businesses that focus on mission,
right,
to the leaving purpose kind of untouched, undiscovered, and businesses lose their way.
Sure,
you've seen them.
So absolutely.
But those who deal with purpose and keep purpose forward stay on a real intentional path. So when I think about leadership, I have to come to terms with what I think God has purposed for me.
Wonderful.
And that coming to the point of an assignment and how those things work out. So staying on purpose, discovering purpose is at the heart of the intentionality. And so you do see, well, I don't know that you see it in me. I see in other leaders.
Sure.
Those who know their purpose are pretty dogged about their pursuit of that.
Absolutely.
I think purpose is both the rudder and the compass.
I love it.
Of the organization. Mission's the engine and the operational parts. But if you don't have that compass reading and the rudder that keeps you headed there, the purpose. It's easy to get drifting a little bit.
Certainly. You alluded to this a moment ago, but how did you find your purpose?
A long journey. And I'll tell you, it started with a question that a man asked me. I was 35 years old. I was in the truck stop business in North Texas, and it was not fun at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a man that I admired, who I knew to be a follower of Christ, and he was, I guess he was probably close to my age now,
mm-hmm.
when I went to him as a much younger man. And he had sold his oil production business and was using his assets in service to God as a businessman. And I was really attracted to that. Sat down with him one day and I said, "Look, here's my story. I'm frustrated. What do I do?" And he looked at me and said, "Tell me what you do well."
Okay.
Fascinating question.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave him an honest answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, and I at that time I was leading a college men's Bible study and speaking a good bit. And I told him what I thought I did well. He said, "You just described to me what could be the pastor of a church. Why are you in the truck stop business?" And it was a perfect question, because the answer was a discovery that my talents were this way and my application was this way. Mm-hmm. And it was a confusing mess. Mm-hmm. But when I found my purpose, not to be a pastor, I've never been a pastor of a church. Mm-hmm. I've been running alongside a church for a long time, but in the various things I've done. But when my purpose and my activity aligned, and gradually I began to discover my purpose was to influence men.
Wonderful.
Broadly stated.
Right.
More qualified to influence men in the way of following Christ on his terms, not theirs.
Right. Right.
And that's what I've been doing for a long time.
Sure.
So that, as I became aware of that really is my purpose.
I love it. So when this older gentleman proposed to you that perhaps you should consider being a pastor, did that surprise you? Did it was it something you felt? Was it how did you feel then?
No, it affirmed.
Okay.
But I've never been called to be a pastor, so there was still a quirk in that a little bit. But in the day, in the mid '80s, when that was happening, and particularly in Baptist world where I was existing, mm-hmm. There were only two things you could do with a calling to service to God. One was to be a pastor of a church, the other was to be a missionary. And I was not called to be either one, interestingly.
Yeah.
So there was much more to learn in that journey.
Mm-hmm.
That led to how it would play out, ultimately as a college president and now as a consultant, business consultant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredible. So to somebody who might be watching this and they might be wondering what their purpose is, or maybe they have some discontent in their life with their current vocation, you would, as it was proposed to you, advise them to really sit down and look at what do they do well, and then align what they do well with the appropriate activity. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think that's broadly stated, yes.
Okay.
I use a simple illustration when I'm dealing with another man around that question. To create 3 columns on a piece of paper. Top of one column, what do I do well? Top of the second column, what values do I hold dear? Mm-hmm. And third, what roles do I play?
Right.
And populate those lists independently. Don't try to correlate them. Just populate them. So you have in one column, here's what I think do well, and then come back and put them in a priority order. What do I do really well, and then a hierarchical listing. And then what values do I?
Right.
Again, independent of the other 2 columns, what are those values? and and put that in a priority, right? And then the third one, what are my roles?
Right.
Husband, father, friend, business owner, etc. And rank those. Now, then I say, come back and draw a line under number 10 in each one. And then begin to test those things, see how they relate to one another. What is the most important role you play? What are the values that you exercise in that role? And then what do you do well in the practice of that role? And then draw another line under number 5. So you've condensed it.
Right.
And over time, that man will find his purpose somewhere in those 5 lines, in those 3 columns. Because that is discovered in prayer, which is the other part of what we talk about. You get in the presence of God, you stay there and discover.
Sure. Yeah. I love it. Boy, that is deep. And you've obviously spent some time not only in thought about it and perhaps creating it, but also it sounds like leading many people through that process.
Well, it's a process.
Sure.
And the journey, not the podcast, my morning devotional called The Journey is really a practice of hearing from God about what he wants me to do with his things on a given day.
Sure.
But it's always about how to follow him on his terms.
Right.
And it's not a one-day affair.
Yeah.
It's many years in the making.
I'm sure. Lots of twists and turns along the way.
Yes. Surprisingly, there's always good ones.
Yeah. So your mentor, that friend, says, Pastor, how did you specifically? Did you go through this process yourself, or okay? So you went through that process yourself, and that's how you ended up at University of Mobile, or was that much further down the line?
No, it is all part of that story. I not long after that meeting with that friend, I determined to sell the business and move to whatever might come next. Now, again, the only options would be pastor, church, or missionary, and I was not moved by either of those two things.
Right.
So there was something else to discover. So I began to seek counsel again.
Yeah.
So I went to men with my color hair as a younger man and said, "Okay, here's the deal. What should I do?" And the answer, again, in that day and in that environment, well, you, my son, must go to seminary. Well, I was 36 years old, married 2 children. Going to seminary was what I considered to be a fallback when nothing else worked.
Right.
And that was a poor choice of description, but that was kind of how I felt about it. So I went looking for another advisor. I went through about 7 of those guys, and they all gave me the same answer.
Really?
And then another friend of mine, a mentor, who at that time had been our pastor in North Texas, in our hometown of Wichita Falls, but had become the president of New Orleans Baptist Seminary, was in town, and I asked for an appointment, and I told him my story, and he said, "Oh, well, you need to go to seminary." After about 7 of them, the handwriting's on the wall. So I said, and he said, "And by the way, I know which one you need to go to." Now, you need to understand, when you grow up in Wichita Falls, Texas, New Orleans is a foreign country.
Sure.
And so Marilyn and I went to visit, and I walked on the campus there in Gentilly in New Orleans, and I knew immediately that was where we needed to be. Now, it took Marilyn a little longer to come to that same sense of conviction, but I knew that was it. So we made the plans, sold our home, packed up the babies, and drove ourselves in a rental truck to New Orleans, where I could not even pronounce the names of the streets.
Right.
And knew only 2 people, that president of that institution and his wife. And we enrolled in what was the thing to do, which was the Master of Divinity program, which I rapidly began to understand was designed to make a Baptist preacher of me. But I wasn't called to that. I was not moved to that. I knew that my role was something else, though not quite sure what it would be. So I went back to my then now my president of my institution, I said, it's not working out. This wants to make me a Baptist preacher. I am not that. I'm a business guy. And he said, well, you can do denominational work. No. More discovery. But about a year into that experience, he hired me into the administration of the graduate school there, the seminary. So I entered higher ed administration through a back door, and along the way, did just about everything one does in the administration of higher education, apart from being a faculty member. And when at his retirement, his successor asked me to be his executive vice president. So I found myself in an interesting place where I was marrying the skills of ministry and organizational management in this thing called higher ed. And the skills that I gained there, what attracted, what led me then to University of Mobile, which needed a president who had certain experiences, accreditation and things like that, which I did.
Sure.
And here we found ourselves.
Sure.
For 18 years.
That it seems like there's a lot of twists and turns through that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, as you think back on that time, some of the feelings you had? Were you frustrated? Were you scared?
Frustrated?
Were you
emotions? You want emotions in this?
Absolutely.
Let me tell you another story that has to do with it. I told you I'm an outdoor photographer.
Right.
And I showed you a picture of an elk just a moment ago.
Sure.
Marilyn and I were in Colorado to attend a wedding, but we built some other time around it. So we were there enjoying mountains and vistas, and I was there to find an elk. I wanted a bull elk in the wild as part of my portfolio. We drove all over Colorado. We heard stories of elk. We said, we run across people, oh, yes, they were here just yesterday. You should have been here yesterday.
Right.
But never saw the elk. So about 3 days in, I stopped and asked the Lord, can I have a picture of one of your elk? And rather immediately, the answer came back that I believe was, he and I have these conversations a lot. And the answer came back, I've got one for you. And I began to look for that elk. Every turn, every corner of Colorado, every mountain, every stream, every canyon, every piece of acreage that was open, I was looking for that elk, not to be found. 3 days later, we were at the rehearsal dinner of the wedding, and I overheard two guys talking. And one of them said, yeah, I saw that herd down the Telluride yesterday, behind the Shell station. I knew where the Shell station was. I've been down that road many times. The next morning, I was there at 5 o'clock in the morning. And as the sun rose, there they were. There's always a gap between a promise and the fulfillment. We live in that gap. And in that gap will be emotion. It will be either sadness or frustration or anger or fear or combinations of all of them. Or it will be joy and hope and faith. Now, how you experience the gap is a choice that every man gets to make. A lot of pressure on a guy to find the fulfillment of his hope or his promise. And the longer that gap goes, the more intense become the emotions. But one of the promises of Scripture is that I will answer and I will show you. I will lead you. So a simple thing like a picture of a bull elk, which came about 3 days later, becomes a metaphor for a life. There's always that gap. You're in one now.
Sure.
I'm in one now.
Sure.
We're always moving on a journey. So the trick is, how do you handle the gap? And the options are, you let your emotions run it, or you let the Spirit of God run it. The right choice is the Spirit of God. Now, staying in that position takes a daily process
Right.
of commitment, surrender, confession. But when you do that, and the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Mm-hmm.
The
You
more
exercise that
familiar-
muscle.
Yeah, the more excuse me, the more familiar you get with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the elk's a metaphor
Absolutely.
and a really good picture.
It is. It certainly is. And so just to underscore that determination, that patience, that ability to continue to move forward comes back from your first statement of purpose and why.
Mm-hmm.
And then you personally exercise that muscle through perpetual time in scripture or prayer and time with the Lord. Is that a fair assessment to summarize?
Yeah, prayer is a big deal. Time
Mm-hmm.
is a part of that.
Sure.
You know, you think about the greatest leader, in my estimation, in history, is Moses, simply because he led in several roles
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, in over his head the entire time.
Yeah.
And was excellent at it
Mm-hmm.
most of the time.
Yeah.
But he led spiritually, he led organizationally, he led militarily,
Mm-hmm.
he led financially. He covered the gamut. But he also led through the experience, always in the experience of a face-to-face conversation with God that started at a burning bush, an anomaly
Right.
that got his attention.
Right.
And that became the guiding moment of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And with that came the assignment: go back to Egypt and get the people and bring them out. Simple, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the fact that he was in over his head gives us hope as leaders, right? That if we feel in over our head, perhaps we're in the right spot in some circumstances.
I think it's evidence sometimes that you are.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly evidence of discovery to be made. I think we who've grown up in this era, particularly in the South, are convinced that we can do about anything
Mm-hmm.
and should, and we take
Mm-hmm.
on responsibilities that are not really ours to have.
Sure.
So there's a need to discover this dependence on God as opposed to
Dependence on
oneself.
Yeah.
That's a process.
Sure.
Surrender's a tough word for a lot of guys,
Absolutely.
but it's a very important word in following Christ.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Many leaders constantly have people pulling on them. How have you kept that at bay and stayed focused on the leadership task at hand as perhaps administrations or other people pull on you for their agenda?
Well, you're back to purpose again. Once you
Mm-hmm.
identify your purpose and you become convinced that this is the course, then it becomes easier to say, no, thank you. No. When I first got to the University of Mobile, it was a mess. There are a lot of reasons for that, but we'll let that word suffice. And there were two large factions in Baptist world in Alabama that wanted to go this way or that way, and I was my being here was heavily opposed by some of those people, including some pastors of note in Mobile. But I knew I was to be here, and that became an unshakable truth in me that allowed me to move through that time of opposition. There was a great album that had just come out. The Eagles did a reunion album back about that time in the late '90s, and the title of it was "Hell Froze Over," which is but the lead cut on the "Hell Froze Over" album of the Eagles was "Get Over It."
Wow!
So that became my theme.
Yeah,
we're changing things. Get over it. It's going to be okay. Follow me. I'm following Christ. It's going to work.
Sure.
Now, that's a lot of bravado
Right.
that resulted in a lot of long nights of camping out in the presence of God and saying, Lord, are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
He said, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the elk again. I've got one for
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you. Live in the gap. Trust me. I'll show you where the elk is.
Amen.
But the key to that is don't go looking for the elk.
Mm.
You seek God.
Right. It will lead you to
Yeah.
the elk.
And that was the story of the University of Mobile through the 18 years.
Wow.
My job was to get it ready for the next guy.
Mm-hmm. That'll do it for part 1 of this episode. Please join us in a couple of weeks as we drop the second part of this episode. I promise you won't want to miss it.